So, but she urges her two widowed daughter-in-laws, because she's thinking of them, to remain where they are in Moab, because that's where their families were, and that would also honestly give them a better chance at remarriage, which would protect them and provide for them again. And so one of them, Orpah, don't get that confused with Oprah. It's so close, and it's such an unusual, beautiful name that sometimes we do that, but it's Orpah. She took her up on it. And Ruth, and don't fault her for that. This is God's word. This is God's plan. Ruth refused to leave Naomi. So if you're saying, well, what is it about that? It's a story of loyalty, fierce, life and death, loyalty. Now, I want to also talk about something. You see the selflessness, and the fact that she is willing to go alone, which would be very dangerous. The trip, once she gets there, what is she going to do? To go it alone was life-threatening. And Ruth knew that. So that's why we studied Ruth and her faithfulness to her mother-in-law. But Naomi, they're pretty bad off when they get to Bethlehem. I mean, they're destitute people. And every one who saw Naomi come into the city of her homeland would say her name, shout her name, Naomi, which means pleasant, and she would correct them and say, no, my name is Mara, which, or call me Mara, which meant, that's M-A-R-A, which meant bitter. So names often in the Bible define character, define personality, define purpose in someone's life. She says the Almighty, if you want to look at this, it's verse 20 and 21. She says, for the Almighty has dealt bitterly with me. I went out full, but the Lord has brought me back home again empty. Have you ever felt grief transform you from feeling joyful to the Lord into feeling bitter with the Lord? And this sweet, pleasant Naomi turned into a bitter woman. And so we have to be very careful when we're grieving to reach out to the Lord for strength, to not become that person that is bitter and depressed. And that in that day, that word may have even been used interactively, that bitterness is what causes depression. Sadness is what causes depression. Staying in that place too long can become a way of thinking. And even bodily, we know it can change chemically to the point that you need medication to help come out of it in order to get enough counseling to deal with what the situation is, then get off the drugs, and then get away from the source and get back to a place of joy. But can I tell you, the strength that you get, the Bible's very clear, the joy of the Lord is our strength, not the joy of this life. So, Naomi and Ruth come back. They're destitute. And they really come back, what you would think is with no hope. But the story goes, it was harvest season, and therefore there was a Jewish tradition that allowed for poor people and foreigner people, and people, especially for women who had no other means, to follow the reapers of the harvest season while they were reaping the harvest in the fields, and they could gather up any leftover grain. And you'll see this in Leviticus 23:2. Leviticus chapter 23:2, if you want to look that up. So that was a tradition. So Ruth goes out. She gathers up the barley for her and for Naomi, and of course by God's design. Where she was gleaning from, those fields were Boaz's field, which was a very wealthy man, and he also was related to Naomi's husband. And there was also traditions of that if someone's husband dies in your family, that it's now left for the male family members to take care of the women, again, to protect them and provide for them. So it's a good thing. It's, if you're in a feminist mentality, you may go, I don't need that. But in that day, you did, and it was a point of care. So Also, Boaz heard about um, Ruth's kindness towards Naomi, which is his family member, her industry, the fact that she is willing to work hard in order to provide for her. And so he made sure that his workers, because the field they were in, left extra grain just for Ruth and Naomi. And so Naomi is recognizing Boaz as a kinsman of hers, a kind of redeemer, someone who will save her. And when you have a close relative like that can rescue you when you're in need, that is a redeemer in her eyes. So again, if you look in verse 1, Naomi makes another decision. She says, "My daughter, shall I not seek security for you, that it may be well with you?" And really, though, Ruth at that point had become Naomi's provider. Naomi wanted Ruth to have a better life since she had come back with her to Bethlehem. And so she purposely, designed by God, placed Ruth in Boaz's path. And that was the plan. And that caused Ruth to tell Boaz of the responsibility that he had to help them. And this wasn't an ugly thing. This was her saving herself, saving her mother-in-law, and only acting on a tradition that was acceptable. And so he liked her character, and he agreed to help her. He married her. He took responsibility not just for her in marrying her, but for both women, to protect them, to provide for them. And when they had their first child, Obed, he became heir to Ruth's first husband. And so you also see that those things would be his, and that included the care for the family. And so now this terrible bitterness is replaced with joy. And it just shows you how God works. And I'm going to have to take this call. So I may go to another part. So hold on.